the motivation.
Okay, quickly taking a look at China's strong condemnation for the United States redirecting Venezuelan oil exports to Washington and away from Beijing. This after President Trump unveiled a plan to refine and sell up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil stuck in the country under a US blockade. Listen in to what the Foreign Ministry spokesperson of China said.
The United States has brazenly resorted to the use of force against Venezuela and demanded that America First be applied when Venezuela disposes of its own oil resources. This is a typical act of bullying, a serious violation of international law, and a grave infringement on Venezuela's sovereignty that also severely undermines the rights of Venezuelan people. China strongly condemns this. I would like to stress that the legitimate rights and interests of China and other countries in Venezuela must be protected. The United States has long imposed illegal unilateral sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector and has recently brazenly used force against Venezuela, dealing a severe blow to the country's economic and social order and also threatening the stability of global production and supply chains. China has already issued strong condemnation in this regard. I would like to reiterate that cooperation between China and Venezuela is a cooperation between sovereign states and is protected by international law and laws of both countries.
All right, Keith, if you're still with me, I would want to ask you about this grand plan that US President Donald Trump has with regards to US oil companies taking over Venezuelan oil. And in fact, he has issued a fresh threats telling Venezuela to cut ties with China, Russia and Iran. So what, I mean, the strategy of US President is clearly very simple: to cut off China, Russia and Iran, allow for Venezuelan oil reserves to be only for the purpose of American usage. Andrew, would you like to respond?
Yes. The first thing that needs to be noted is that Chinese oil imports from Venezuela amount to about 1% of Chinese consumption. So focusing on that, I think, as an explanation for why China is up in arms is wrong. China has an established practice, as do many great powers, of weaponizing international law, not treating it as a neutral framework within which they operate, but using it as a cudgel to strike other great powers. The US does this, Russia does this. I mean, Russia of all countries talking about violating international law and invading another country, really? And China is very good at playing this game. I would note, too, that Chinese commentators have gone out of their way to make a distinction between what the US has done in Venezuela and what the People's Republic of China is likely to be doing with respect to Taiwan. But that's an adjacent issue. It's not surprising at one level that every country in the world is going to say, do not violate sovereign rights because of Venezuela, because they're in the business of sovereignty. That every country claims to be sovereign, and nobody wants the undue illegal intervention in their internal affairs by a foreign power. But a lot of countries have said behind the scenes and back channels, you know, we don't like Maduro. We're glad he's gone. He wasn't really democratically elected. That was a fraudulent election. He deserved to be removed. But we don't want international law, that bedrock, the fundamental, the most important aspect, brick in the wall of international law is sovereignty, non-interference in the internal affairs of another country, unless it's sanctioned by the UN Security Council, which this wasn't, or you're using force in actual self-defense, which this wasn't.
Okay.
And it's even, yeah.
Okay, all right. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank you, Andrew, and Keith Vaz for joining me, sharing your views. On that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching.